Welcome to the D Post for All Season Sports Show. I'm Drew Rubenstein here again with Dave Raese. And Dave, the WVU football team is about to open spring practice on Sunday, March 2nd, leading up to the beginning of spring ball. Dana Holgorsen still had an empty spot on his coaching staff. He's filled that with Tom Bradley, and then he also hadn't named a defensive coordinator, and he's promoted Tony Gibson from within. But let's start with Tom Bradley, a familiar name, a longtime Penn State guy. Seems like well-respected throughout the area and region. What was your initial take when you heard Bradley had been named senior associate head coach?
Well, I think it might be Coach Holgorsen's best recruit since his tenure here. I think you get a guy with his reputation in Penn State's defense and stuff, and I think that's an area where West Virginia really needs help. And I was beginning to wonder about how the staff was sizing up on the defense, because they have a lot of new people in there that have not had a lot of experience. And this just covers, I think, a gaping hole in that defense. So I think it was a great hire, and I don't know if it'll turn dividends right away, but I think it was a great hire.
When you look at his pedigree and everything he's done and the success he had at Penn State, and again, he was a guy that even though he was there when things turned ugly with Joe Paterno, he was never found guilty or of any wrongdoing during the Jerry Sandusky scandal. That said, he comes into WVU after being out of the game for a couple years as senior associate head coach. And you mentioned he is a great coach, but in terms of what he's exactly going to be doing, that's still up in the air. WVU staff now has 2 associate head coaches and an assistant head coach. What does all this really mean?
Well, sometimes titles don't cost much, so you can hand those out like candy and things like that. So I wouldn't, like I said, he may be coming in, as sort of an advisor, almost a consultant, since we have so many young defensive coaches and stuff. So maybe it's a short-term situation. Maybe he's, likes living, if still up in Happy Valley there, and didn't want to go too far away. This might allow him to get back into coaching, but yet not be, have to uproot his family. And so I think there's probably some, things that have worked out well for both sides here. So it should be, I think it might be a good fit.
Because you look at Tony Gibson, first-time defensive coordinator. I mean, do you look at the Bradley hiring as almost, it seems like Gibson and Bradley have some sort of relationship. Gibson's new in the job. Bradley's been in it for 30-some years. Is this almost a mentoring of Gibson type of a deal, perhaps?
That's what I looked at it as, And I mean, I think you'll probably help all the defensive coaches. I mean, they're all, for the most part, fairly young with their position coaches. Damon Coggill, a defensive line. He's been a high school coach before this, and now he's going to be coaching defensive line. The other thing we have to remember is that he's not coaching Penn State players, the All-American linebackers and stuff that they turn out. So the talent, no matter what you do with coaching, and it can improve things, but he won't have Penn State talent on in the defense. So you can't expect that kind of, performance right away.
Should it worry WVU fans at all that he's been out of the game for 2 years? Since he was interim coach for Penn State after Joe Paterno got fired, and he was a finalist for that job, didn't get it, and then since then he's been in broadcasting, hasn't gotten into the game, and he's sat out 2 full seasons. Is that worrisome?
I don't think so. I think a lot of coaches do that nowadays. I mean, Coach Rich Rodriguez sat out a year. Terry Bowden now has looked like he might have things turned around at Akron, was out several years, and I think it happens quite a bit. And I'm sure that even though, he was broadcasting for Penn State and Army and things, and I would imagine he was probably hanging around the offices up there, or at least, keeping in it. I bet he keeps up with what's going on, and I don't think it'd be a problem. Not at all.
The other piece of it, I've talked to a few people that people at least wonder was this a true Dana Holgorsen hire? Was there Oliver Luck? Bradley knows coming in that Dana Holgorsen's on the hot seat. So I guess if you're looking at it maybe from his perspective, what would the appeal of WVU in this situation, realizing the burden that is on Holgorsen to succeed this season? What's the appeal in taking this job if you're Bradley?
Well, I'm not too sure who made the decision to hire him or made the connections, but I imagine it was probably one of those mutual friend type things that, hey, he's trying to get back into coaching. No one's touched him maybe because of the Penn State scandal. We need help on defense. Looks like be a good match. So, if he comes down and does it for a year or two or whatever, I think, it's not a big risk on his part. It's certainly not a risk on, West Virginia's part. I think West Virginia has sort of all to gain on it because they'll have his knowledge and experience helping a defense that the defensive coaching side, it really lacks a lot of experience. So they really filled a void there, and I think it can only help. It's too bad maybe they didn't get him earlier, but by the time fall comes around, that should really help him, I think, this year. But again, he's not going to be coaching, the Penn State caliber type of athlete that he's been used to coaching, for 30 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the inexperienced Tony Gibson will become the fourth defensive coordinator in 4 years, the last 4 years under Dana Holgorsen at WVU. He's a guy who I mean, and you've been here, and the messy Rich Rodriguez exit, it's still, I don't know, surprising to me, and I'm interested in your take, because he was a guy who was literally on the first plane out of Morgantown to Michigan, December 2007 with Rich Rodriguez, and then you fast forward and somehow after a year leaving Rich from Arizona, coming to WVU, promoted to defensive coordinator. I don't know that ever since that kind of a turnaround would happen. What are your thoughts?
Well, you have to remember when Rich Rodriguez left, Bill Stewart wasn't named head coach right away. So if you're an assistant coach and your former head coach offers you a job, that's pretty safe. If you stay behind at your previous coaching position and they hire a new coach, then you might be looking for a job. So I don't blame him. I don't blame Rich Rodriguez for leaving, for going to a bigger school like Michigan. I don't blame Tony Gibson for leaving. It's just business, and he has to look out for himself in those situations. And you have to commend the players, the coaches who stayed, and then but he can't blame those. So he's back. He wanted to be back. He's a native of the state, and so he's tasted the other, and so now he's come back, and maybe he's more fully committed. People need to go out and test themselves and put themselves out in different situations, and they learn things from that. So he's experienced Big Ten football. He's experienced the Pac-10, and so he's picked up some different type of defenses are needed against these different kinds of offenses. So he should be back as a more experienced coach and a better coach than when he left here, probably.
Along those lines, I mean, he has been a career defensive assistant. You think the time's right? Is he a good guy? He is a West Virginia native for this coordinator job. As you mentioned, it's a tall task given WVU's defensive woes of the last recent years.
Yeah, I mean, he's not inheriting the best situation. Of course, can't go too much down on that things. Yeah. But I imagine, I don't know if it was by design, they felt he was ready, or it was a situation where they were desperate. I'm not too sure. But if they think he has the qualities, and now that they have Coach Bradley here to maybe groom him, then in 2 or 3 years it might be he might be a good defensive coordinator. We don't know. I guess we won't find out. But you still have to remember, it's whoever usually has the better players is the smartest coach. So it's one of those things. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think in all, the hiring of the Bradley was a great idea, and I think no one can lose out of this.
That's a good point, Dave. Appreciate your time once again, and please continue to check vdpost.com for the latest on the Mountaineers. Thanks for watching.